today I want to talk to those of you who have maybe preschoolers or kindergartners, or maybe even a first grader who's struggling a little bit with learning to read. This is for you. So today we're going to talk about some fun ways that you can practice a very beginning reading activity, and you can practice it anywhere on the go. So that's what I love about it, because you can help your child with reading without having to even bring any books. I don't know how much you know about reading. If you're a teacher, you will have heard these words. If you're not, you've probably never, and maybe you have gotten some reading reports home from school where you're like, I don't know what any of this means. So this is for you. We're going to talk real briefly about something that's called phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness means that your child can take the sounds and words and is aware of them, hence phonemic awareness, being aware of phonemes. Phonemes are sounds. So they're aware of the sounds and words, and they can play around with them. And phonemic awareness and having a solid phonemic awareness is one of the main indicators now that we know of a child becoming a good reader. So that stuff is important. So if you can practice it at home with your child and on the go, and it's super easy, I know if moms knew about it, they would do it. So this is why I'm here to share it with you. So what we're going to talk today about is super easy ways to practice the being aware of beginning sounds and words. Teachers also like to call it the initial sound. So either beginning sound or initial sound. And there is a few different fun ways you can do that anywhere you are. There is way more than that, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So we're going to talk about 6 different ways today. All right. So number 1, I am pretty sure you are familiar with the game I Spy. What if you were to play I Spy for beginning sounds instead of just using it in a way to find something of a certain color, which is one of the very common ways to use it. So what if you were to say, I spy something that begins with and your child looks around and finds the thing that begins with Super easy. You can do it anywhere. You can do it in the grocery store, and it's going to keep them actually entertained for a little while. Another thing you can do is you can use friends' names, because littles like to become aware of their friends. We want to talk about their friends, and we want to teach them to remember people's names, because it's just a good skill to have that I struggle with majorly. If you're my friend, you probably know in the beginning, I struggled to learn your name and I hate it, but it's tough for me. So I like practicing it with my kids because I want them to have an easier time than I do. Anyways, so let's think about friends' names and have your child say the friend's name. So let's say my friend's name is Katie. So let's find out, what does the name Katie begin with? What do we hear in the very beginning? And we'll figure out it's K. So that's another way you can do it. Just beginning sounds of names. What if you have your child think about their favorite foods? Number 1, they get to list their favorite foods, which they probably love. And then they get to think about the beginning sounds in them. What does it begin with? And you can model it for them. So something that we could say, man, I wish this was my favorite food. Let's pretend salad is my favorite food. I wish it was. It's really not, but that's okay. Salad is a nice sound because it's a long sound. So it's a little easier to identify than some of the short sounds. So I could say salad. Salad is my favorite food. Oh, it begins with S. There you go. And you can do that for all kinds of foods. Your kids' favorite foods, maybe you want to get really crazy, their favorite junk foods. Just let them dream and make it a reading use. Makes it creative. Another thing that my kiddos used to love, and my daughter has loved this since she was 2, is we would use the ABC, and we would go through the ABC and call it kind of the a, because we're using the beginning sound, right? And they would come up with a word that goes with each sound. So, and we would take turns to make sure it's fair. Okay, and I would go, oh, okay, A says ah. I can think of apple that starts with a. And then my son would go and say b, b, b. What's something I can think of with b? Bear. Okay. Now, if we wanted to make this a little trickier, we would sometimes even assign, okay, it's supposed to be an animal, but or it's supposed to be a food or somehow like that. But in the very beginning, we simply would go through the ABC and anything would count. Now, obviously for kids, it's hard to know, especially with C or K, to know the difference. So it gave us the opportunity to just talk about it, right? That some letters sound the same. And so we don't know which one it is until we learn to spell them. Another thing that we like to do is just thinking of a word that begins with, and we use a beginning sound. So see how we're kind of turning it around. Instead of identifying the beginning sound in a word, now we're coming up with the beginning sound. So let's say we pick B, and so we say anything that begins with B. And now let's think of words that begin with B. You can do that anywhere. It can pass the time. And my kids always love doing it. And a last thing I wanted to share, a last idea, is just give them a topic like, okay, let's figure out the beginning sounds of the vehicles around us if we're on the road. Truck starts with T. Car starts with K. Bus starts with B. Okay. Or you could do the same thing in their playroom with their toys. As you're playing together, you can throw some beginning sound practice in there. Or you could do it just with items around you. Let's say you're in the middle of the grocery store. Okay, let's look at this bag of pasta. What does pasta begin with? And there you go. It passes the time. It oftentimes, for me, was a great tool for distraction. Because if they start bickering with each other and having a hard time with each other, if I can divert their attention into a game, it helps. So many times this helped us divert tantrums, divert fights, and it helped with boredom. So this is why I like playing games like that. And the best part about it is that they're literacy games and they help your child with reading later on. So it's a total win-win to do with a preschooler. Where are places where I used games like this? I've mentioned a few of them. We've played this these games in the grocery store, in the car, so many times in the car. My daughter, if she would fall asleep in the car, guys, even if it was just for a minute or two, like literally, that's how little it took, she would not nap at home anymore. So I would do anything I could ever think of for the child not to fall asleep in the car unless I knew she could take her full nap there. So games is how we kept her awake. So we played these games in the car a lot. Waiting in line, because kids hate to wait in line. Waiting at the doctor's office, because even 5 minutes seem like forever. And I know, we hand them our phones and stuff like that, but I just tried my best to come up with a few other creative ideas, because that would engage every one of them rather than them fighting over a device that someone had, right? The school pickup line, because I don't know about your school, but my son's school, it can take a while for pickup. So as the rest of us is in the car, we can play a quick game. While doing hair, if you have a little girl whose hair you do and it takes a little while, we play games while we do this. While we're on a walk, it's really cool to just do it out in the neighborhood because you see so many things and you can identify their beginning sounds and you can come up with beginning sounds and you can play I spy trying to spot something that begins with b. See how many variations there are? And it all helps with your child being able to be a great reader later on. And lastly, we've played this on the playground because it makes for a really fun time playing with mom and not bickering with each other. And sometimes, when there's not other kids at the playground and my son doesn't want to play with what my daughter wants to play, and my daughter doesn't want to play what my son wants to play, I have to kind of run interference. These are ways I ran interference, and we practiced literacy at the same time. So I hope these tips help you. And I would be really super curious to see which ones you tried. So make sure you put maybe in the comments for us which ones you tried out and what was your favorite thing and what your kids love too.